Hi, I'm Mike Dawson. I want to invite you to be a part of the stereo music podcast experience, Front of House. What's Front of House? Well, I just told you. It's a stereo music podcast experience. We have two ears. When we listen to music, the sound vibrations hit our ears at separate times. Therefore, stereo. So when you're listening to music, it's best to pump it in stereo. So what makes Front of House the best music podcast? Well, it's the artists, it's the interviews, and it's you. Because you now have a chance to be a part of the great stereo music experiment we call Front of House. You want to be in the audience? You want to be at our live streams on Tuesday night? Do you want high definition MP3s fully mastered of the artists playing? Do you want exclusive access to videos? Do you want to come to a big Front of House concert? You can. All you gotta do is sign up as a Patreon supporter of Front of House. There's a link right here. Just go to it and sign up. There are a few different levels with a few different perks, but I promise you, every single one's gonna be worth it. Coming this summer and not going away. Front of House, the greatest stereo music podcast ever produced, live from the North Hollywood hideout in Los Angeles, California. This is Front of House. All right, my friends, welcome to Front of House Live here in Los Angeles, California. We're in the North Hollywood hideout. That's my boy Champ you hear barking because we're about to hit a heat wave here in Los Angeles. And we expect temperatures to get up to the hundreds by this weekend. So we have the garage completely open right now, so we get a little breeze through here. So you're hearing the dog bark in the backyard, and I apologize for that. But we are live right now in North Hollywood. Hey, Champ, look. Champ, look. Champ, look. Quiet. Now, Boo is going at it. Tonight, we're going to go through our performance with the Heir Apparent. We had him in the studio a couple of months ago, right here in this room. And we talk, he plays songs. The entire interview is going to run about 80 minutes. We invite you to join us for the whole thing. We're also streaming this live on YouTube, as you know. And there's a chat room on the YouTube channel where you can ask us questions and we'll gladly answer them. We'll cut back in halfway through the show. I want to thank Rode Microphones for making this possible. All of the microphones that we use are from Rode. Thank you very, 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 very much. And this season of Front of House is brought to us, or is dedicated to our dear friend Jenny Pagliaro, who passed away from cancer earlier in 2019. Check out their record, Echoes and Silence, and go to rosesandcigarettes.com and buy the record there. And a recurring theme in all of this is the artists that you see on this show. I will always tell you to go directly to their website and buy their music from them directly. That's how the money stays in the artist's pocket. All right, so the Heir Apparent is coming up. But before we get going, my friends, a reading from the Big Book of Rock. Despite all his oft-expressed claims, Jerry Lee Lewis was never really the king of rock and roll. He's just lived the life better than anyone else. Pumped full of pills and liquor, flashing firearms and chasing women at every opportunity. He has spent 40 years seemingly bent on his own destruction, playing concerts that vary from drunken farces to barnstorming spectacles. A reading from the Big Book of Rock. Hail, hail, rock and roll. And now, without any further ado, we invite you to give us comments and feedback on the live YouTube feed. Let's go back a few weeks where we welcome the Heir Apparent into the studio. You're watching Front of House Live. Live from the North Hollywood Hideout in Los Angeles, California. Welcome back to Front of House, the stereo music podcast that brings the greatest artists you may or may have not ever heard of right into your living room. Our guest today, Kyle M. Tarizzi. Kyle, how are you, man? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing real good. Thanks for having me.
Let's hear a song, my brother.
Okay. This song's called Be Free.
When can I move on? I'm ready for confirmation to come. It's the first thought I compete with every morning. But before I'm even on my feet, I pray and I repeat. Don't wanna be this, don't wanna be that. Don't wanna give up, I wanna give back. I wanna be free by whatever means. Whatever you want from me, I wanna be. Where did I go wrong? Give me back the years that are wasted and gone. Say you won't be long. I've been waiting here for salvation to come. It's the thirst that I compete with every morning. Before I'm even on my feet, I pray and I repeat. Don't wanna be this, don't wanna be that. Don't wanna give up, I wanna give back. I wanna be free by whatever means. Whatever you want from me, I wanna be. Don't wanna be this, don't wanna be that. Don't wanna give up, I wanna give back. I wanna be free by whatever means. Whatever you want from me, I wanna be. I wanna be clear, starting right here. I'm getting this act together. Whatever you wish, top of my list. I'll make it this back forever. I wanna be set free by whatever is holding me back. Show the way, show the way, show the way. Yeah. I don't wanna be this, don't wanna be that. Don't wanna give up, I wanna give back. I wanna be free by whatever means. Whatever you want from me, I wanna be. Don't wanna be this, don't wanna be that. Don't wanna give up, I wanna give back. I wanna be free by whatever means. Whatever you want from me, I wanna be. I wanna be. I wanna be free by whatever means.
Kyle M. Tarizzi is our guest today, front of house. Resident of Berkeley, California, making his way into the Southland.
You got it, the B-Town.
When's the last time you were here in LA?
Good question. I want to say it's been a while, but then I might space, and maybe I have been here sooner. Actually, I've never talked about this before, but the last time I was in LA was last February, auditioning for The Voice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they reached out to me and asked me if I would come, and I don't know, I think I'm not supposed to talk about this, but
Talk about it.
they reached out to me and said, hey, would you come down and audition for The Voice? So they do like 1 or 2 rounds of auditions, and then you get invited down to perform at some sound studio here where they
Sure.
film you and stuff. And so I just came down and got slotted in kind of after the 3rd tier, and it went well. Actually, well, I should say, as far as they were concerned, it went well. They invited me to a further step where I did like a camera interview. But as far as the actual audition went, I was literally in the middle of it thinking, this is going as bad as I reasonably thought it could go. Like, I'm doing these shows with Matt Nathanson right now, touring around, and before I left for these shows, I had all these like dreams of like just failing completely on stage and like my voice shaking and feeling like overwhelmed. And it's been the exact opposite of that. I've been really satisfied with just walking on stage, and even though these are like really big rooms, at least what I'm used to playing, I felt really confident. But for whatever reason, when I was doing The Voice, I just felt completely deflated. And as soon as I started, the whole time just felt like a struggle. And so I was surprised they asked me to do the next step. But yeah, that's as far as it went. But that was the last time I was in Los Angeles. I like flew into Burbank, did the audition, and the next night like flew out. So
Did you find that in auditioning for the voice, did it seem like it was the best listening audience you could have ever asked for? Because they were essentially looking for something. So they're rapt with attention
Oh
to
man,
what you're doing.
I want to preface it by
And
saying,
did
I
that
mean,
throw you off?
no, I mean that was an interesting question because that's like not how I experienced it at all. I don't think um, I mean, I'm really flattered that they asked me, and I have nothing wrong with it. I have many friends who've done the show and the thing that sold me on even auditioning in the first place was them telling me what a phenomenal experience it was.
Mhm.
Friends of mine who gone much further and was like sequestered and did the what do they call it, the blind auditions. And I thought, well, even if I don't do the show, even if I don't want to do the show, that experience would still be worthwhile. But I think actually doing that when I was younger, I did a lot of theater,
Mhm.
and I would do a lot of auditions for like movies and TV and stuff. And it actually kind of snapped me back to like when I was a kid, and you're auditioning for these casting directors, and they've seen tons of people all day, and they're very polite. You know, they're not rude, but they've seen a lot of people, and they're not. And it's not a. I don't mean this pejoratively. I think it just is the case. They're not listening to hear how good you are. They're casting a show, and so they're listening to you very specifically. And even though there's some people at a table who are sort of listening very attentively, there's also a few production people sort of in the background who are
Mhm.
just sort of wandering about. And I mean, that's just the nature of performance. I mean, that's the experience itself too. Is performing for that kind of room as well. So, was it the most rapt audience I've had? I don't, maybe not the way that you're thinking about it, but
Okay.
they certainly weren't bad at all. I mean, they were very friendly, and at every stage of the way. I mean, I was impressed at how professional and polite to absolutely everyone that they were. It was very professional.
All right, so let's go back just a little ways. You were a guest on Front of House a few years back,
Indeed, I was.
but in the time since, you've developed a new artist persona to perform and release music on. You no longer go by Kyle M. Terizzi.
Right. Yeah. Right now I write and perform as M, the heir apparent. And it's sort of funny when I did the Front of House podcast, that was also me performing under my own name was a sort of second reiteration. I used to write and perform as the Plastic Arts,
Hmm.
and I did that for a long time. And actually performing under my own name when I even did the podcast was actually pretty short lived. But I had sort of a personal and creative sort of development period back in like 2015 or so, and I think personally and creatively, I was just trying to like break with like everything I had done before, and yeah, and I for whatever reason this I performing as Kyle M. Terizzi for a long time was something I had done, and I'm wearing the T-shirt now, but I would always have this M logo even as Kyle M. Terizzi, and it always sort of spoke to me for some reason. And I always in the back of my mind was always thinking like, would I ever have the courage to just be like a letter, you know?
It takes a level of courage, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and
I mean, but some people may argue that it takes more courage to use your own name.
Right.
But then when you're performing and you run by an alias, you're putting yourself out amongst all those other people
Right.
who had stage names and aliases, and there's got to be a thought that goes through your head like, am I good enough to do it like this?
Dude, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about names and stuff, which is, a lot of people have very normal sounding names, but that's not their real name at all.
Mhm.
And then there's people who have monikers which sound kind of silly, and maybe M the heir apparent is one of them. So if I had to go with my gut today, I'd probably say if I could go back and do it all over again, I probably would never have changed my name at all. I probably would have just been the Plastic Arts the entire time.
Mhm.
But that's more from a practical perspective. There was a lot of people who found that music and really connected with it when I was the Plastic Arts, and I hadn't really realized it. And so when I changed my name, I realized I just, in an age of social media, I had just made it harder for people to follow me. And that was just not something I had thought out because I just didn't realize how many people had connected with that music. And then doing it a third time. I mean, it's sort of strange because actually in the last 3 years, I've reached more people with my music that I've made in the last 3 years than all the years combined. But in some ways, it's still very new. And when you have a name like M, the heir apparent, there's some practical obstacles that come along with it. it's something that sounds fine on paper when you move forward with it, but as soon as you start telling people your name and everybody goes, "What? Who? Wait, what's that? What is that?" And you realize, oh man, like I didn't realize what a stumbling block this was going to be. It's something that makes a lot of sense to me, but you know, part of music is marketing, and you know, it may be something that's very sumptuous to you creatively and makes a lot of sense, but if people have trouble wrapping their mind around it, it just makes it hard to market, you know. So,
Okay. Well, for the purpose of this interview, I'm going to call you M and
Sure.
respect the moniker.
Thank you very much.
Currently on tour with Matt Nathanson throughout the West Coast tour.
I started in Seattle the other week, and we did Portland, Napa, Santa Ana. We were in San Diego last night, and tomorrow we're here in LA, and then we're closing it out with 2 nights in San Francisco at Great American Music Hall.
And those shows are both sold out. Congratulations.
Actually, yeah, I think, you know, I don't think, let's see, I don't think Santa Ana was sold out beforehand, but it sold out that night. And then tomorrow's not sold out either. There's still some tickets available, but
The San Francisco Great American Music Halls, I was speaking of specifically. 2 nights in a row, those are out. Clean.
And everything else was sold out. So
we call it clean in the industry.
They all went clean, and it had nothing to do with me. They were all, most of them were sold out long before I even got on the bill. So this is really these performances are a gift.
So I'm curious, when you get up on stage, you play your first song. This is the, hey, you've never heard of me before, but here's who I am. You always got to come out with your fire. First hit. What's the first song you play? Can we hear it?
That song I just played. That's my
That was great.
one. But if you want to, I mean, I can certainly play the one that I follow it up with.
Please. Let's hear another song. This is M the Heir Apparent, and you are tuned in to Front of House.
This is a song called I'm a Pawn.
Headstrong, I swallowed everything. I played your memory down. Dead wrong. Now I'd give anything I had to keep you around. But one of these days I should resist you for letting me go. Now that I'm here, I'm starting to miss you, but already know. I'm a pawn you play when you choose. Just another name you can use. Just another wave that doesn't carry us away. I sit and I stay as long as you call, you catch me. Next one, heart broke whenever I run back to be with you now. Head spun, I can't tell whether you're out drunk or sleeping around. But one of these days I should resist you for letting me go. Now that I'm here, I'm starting to miss you, but already know. I'm a pawn you play when you choose. Just another name you can use. Just another wave that doesn't carry us away. I sit and I stay as long as you call, you catch me. Now that I'm here, now that I've kissed you, I already miss you, so letting go. My fingers started slipping, I already know. hurt you. Just another name you can use. Just another wave that doesn't carry us away. I sit and I stay as long as you call, you catch me. I sit and I stay as long as you call, you catch me.
Folks, hope you're enjoying this music from M, the Heir Apparent. I mentioned earlier that you want to go to the artist's website and buy their songs. M has been releasing a song every single month for the past year. Go to thisismxoxo.com. Thisismxoxo.com. You can download any of these tracks, or you can become a front of house Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/front of house. And for as low as $3 a month, we'll deliver you mastered MP3s for your music collection. So make sure you do that. Also, right now, just take the time, go to wherever you listen to podcasts and just subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Podbean, we're everywhere across all formats. So find us, hit the subscribe button, and be sure and tell a friend. I hope you're enjoying your beers and some good music. It's a beautiful day in Los Angeles. This is Front of House, back to M, the Heir Apparent. I'm curious. First, I'm curious at what age you started picking up the guitar, but more importantly, I want to know when you found your voice as such. Because I'm going to take a guess that when you first started playing and singing, you didn't naturally go there. And yet now it sounds so natural and so good. Your early days of performing.
Yeah. It's like I said, I mean, when I started, I did theater. I mean, that was when I was a kid, all I wanted to do was be an actor. And I listened to a lot of musicals and I listened to a lot of music, but I had no interest in being a musician. My first musical interest, when I was a kid, I was monomaniacally obsessed with Michael Jackson. And I wanted to emulate his every move. And but I never considered myself like having a voice. And even when I did theater, every time I auditioned, I just wanted to be like a straight actor. I wanted to do plays or I wanted to do movies. And musical theater was the furthest thing from my mind. And I even remember I ended up studying theater at a boarding school in northern Michigan, like a performing arts boarding school, my freshman year of high school. And I remember at the beginning of the school year, you have to do your auditions, which is like a couple monologues and part of a song. And every time I would sing, I started singing. And they go, "Thank you, thank you." Like we've heard it, thank you. And I go, "Of course, yeah. I'm not a singer." And I remember even doing a musical when I was like 12 or maybe like even younger, maybe like 11 or something. And I remember I was the prince in Cinderella, and I remember 3 of the girls from the cast like pulled me aside and explained to me that I sang like a frog, and I was like, "Oh, well, that's good to know." I mean, so
Nice girls.
yeah. Well, now that I'm an adult, I think maybe that was their way of telling me that they liked me. But I think it's crazy when I stopped doing theater and decided I wanted to do music. All I did was play the drums. And I walked in here, I saw your drum set, and I said, "Oh man, that was like my first instrument. Every time I see a drum set, I want to play it." But uh, it was crazy. I was literally back at public school in my 10th grade humanities class, and I remember just sitting there thinking about music and being like, "What do I think I'm gonna do being a drummer? Like, I don't want to be in the back of the band. Like, I want to be in the front." My brother had a guitar, and I was like, "I'm gonna go home and pick up my brother's guitar and teach myself how to play, and I'm gonna be a songwriter." And I just started singing. And at the time, I was listening to a lot of like Radiohead and Sigur Rós and Jeff Buckley, and I really don't think I could do it at the time. But I just knew that if I just kept singing, I would like find a voice.
Right.
That it would just come out of me. And I had a couple moments where people were actually kind of encouraging. I've been traveling with my girlfriend on these dates, and we just played in San Diego, and she's so funny because she's not very. How do I put this? Geographically oriented.
Okay.
Like we're leaving LA, we're going to San Diego. She's like, "Are we going south?" And I'm like, "Yes, we are." I'm like, "We're actually going right next to Tijuana, the Mexican border." And I explained that when I was like a teenager, we used to go to Mexico all the time. I'm originally from Tucson. And I remember going and spending the day in Nogales one time and just being at this bar. I was probably like 16, like getting drunk in the middle of the day in Nogales, Arizona, at this bar called Senor Amigos. And they had this band playing there.
Mr. Friends.
And there was like nobody there.
Right.
There was maybe like 10 people in this band. And we're just sort of sitting there. And they come around with the tip jar. And I said, I'll give you $5 if I can play a song. And I don't know what came over me. It was probably just because I was drinking. But I probably knew 3 songs at the time. And I played one of them, which was Fake Plastic Trees by Radiohead. And my 2 friends who were with me, Jason and Haley, they just couldn't stop bringing it up. They were like, oh my God, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know you could sing. And at the time, I was really flabbergasted. Like, I was like really flattered by it, but I also thought they were just kind of my friends, you know, but whatever reason that like really stuck with me. And so I think I just had enough wind in the sails, like as I was going to keep kind of like pushing me to like pursue this, like, oh, maybe I can sing. And, you know, I mean, I go back and listen to early recordings and I'm indecipherable. Like I literally never enunciated my words.
Artists change throughout time. Everybody
Yeah.
changes and develops. And then once you
Yeah.
got it, that's what it is. I think you got it now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think it was part of it psychological. I think I was sort of timid and scared, and I don't think I was consciously like being hard to understand. But I think,
Well, having a few coldies in Nogales
yeah,
and then picking up the guitar, that definitely helps the
Yeah.
performance anxiety and
Yeah, it
lets you
definitely
hang
helps
your
you get
best
through
stuff
it.
out.
but yeah, and I think just years of listening to yourself record. I mean, as you progress, you're critical, and you decide, yeah, I'm spending a lot of time on these lyrics, and I don't think people are getting them. So, you know, it was a conscious effort to sort of articulate more. But yeah, the voice now, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I sort of came into my own with the voice. I don't know. Probably when I was recording as the Plastic Arts was really the
Mhm.
first time. But you know, it's just been a process over time. So
All right. And the heir apparent is our guest here at the North Hollywood Hideout in Los Angeles, California. This is Front of House Stereo Music Podcast. Let's hear another song, man.
Okay.
I'm digging this.
So this is the song I normally ask if there are any single people in the audience, and then I tell them that this is a song about Tinder. It's a song called Never Known.
Tell me if you wanna see me tonight. You can let it roll, just see where the night leads. And if you're leaving alone, and I'm leaving too, I'll leave with you. Just ask, is it so terrible? I see what you like. You don't need to lie. Wake up in the morning, leave if you like. Think of all the other places you might be. But if you'll be there alone, like I'll be here soon, I'm easy to get back to if you tell me I can leave you a light. You know you don't need my permission to go. Won't beg you to plead your position. You can stay if you're not itching to go. If I see where it's gone, it's only got me wishing that I never know. Oh. You could be unknown to me if you like. You could be another stranger beside me. But if you're feeling at all like I'm feeling, why leave if you don't have to? It's so terrible for treating me right. You know you don't need my permission to go. Won't beg you to plead your position. You can stay if you're not itching to go. If I see where it's going, it's only got me wishing that I never know. It's only got me wishing that I never know. It's only got me wishing that I never know. Baby, if I don't forget, you remind me. Baby, if I don't forget, you remind me. Baby, if I don't forget, you remind me.
Baby, if I don't forget you, remind me.
Yeah.
I like that.
Thanks.
That's nice.
Appreciate that.
Do you have much? I know you have a girlfriend now, but did
Mm-hmm.
you explore the tenderness of relationships at
I
all?
did. Yeah, I did. I went on a handful of Tinder dates. I actually dated someone for like 6 or 7 months that I met on Tinder. I mean, I sort of look at Tinder and online dating. It's like a tool like anything else. It can
Mhm.
be a force of good or it can be a force of evil. And people meet all sorts of ways. And yeah, I have more thoughts about it now, though. I mean, part of that song, I say it's about Tinder. It's not really about. It doesn't come from Tinder. But I think the idea behind it is this sort of, for me, the song anyway is sort of a sort of proposed casual encounter, and then the aftermath of it, which is sort of all the emotional stuff that gets sort of kicked up from that.
Right.
That people don't really like to acknowledge. You know, we all pretend like we're not having this sort of deeper experience. That of course we are because we're human beings and emotional. Um, but I think as far as our popular culture goes, I think Tinder is a lot like that. It's this sort of, you know, a lot of people say they want just sort of casual relationships, and that's perfectly fine. But I think a lot of us pretend that we do, when really we're looking for something a little more meaningful. And I think there's this sort of, maybe you can help me articulate it if you see the same thing, because I haven't quite figured out how to word it. But there's this sort of, I don't want to say it's infantilized, but there's this sort of childish sort of language that people use to talk about their feelings online. Like nobody's really earnest anymore. They don't just say, "Oh, like wow, that was really powerful and emotional." They'll say things like, "Oh, that gave me all the feels."
Mm,
You know, and they don't really say how they're feeling. It's this sort of like
that's something.
nobody's competent anymore. Everyone's adulting. No one's like, "Oh, I'm really struggling." It's like, I can't make it to the bank before it closes. You know, it's like, um, so I feel like Tinder is part of that. Like, oh, I'm not really dating. I'm just sort of casually looking for stuff. It's like, well, why not? Why aren't you Like, why aren't you looking for a partner? You know.
Maybe there's a level of self-preservation inside of that.
Sure. Oh no, that's a great observation. I think it's all coming from a reasonable place, right?
Mhm.
Which is usually self-preservation. It's someone's protecting themselves because it's hard to be vulnerable. And I feel like now more than ever, and I don't know if we're getting off the topic. I'm just following my thoughts here, but you know, I think now more than ever, just being in social media, I think we're feeling more vulnerable than ever because I think we feel like people are watching us all the time, and not just the people that we're in touch with now. I think people go through their lives feeling accountable to every person they've ever met, ever that they've ever allowed to sort of connect with them on social media. Like I'm sort of picturing like Indiana Jones going through cobwebs. You know, it's like you have all these cobwebs on you, and it's like as you go through life, you just accumulate more and more and more, and you
Ooh.
just feel more pressure to like succeed, not just for the people around you, but for everybody you've ever met who's checking in on your life. You know, I talk with people. I had a friend who was visiting in San Francisco, and we were having dinner, and the subject of high school reunions came up. And we're like, who goes to their high school reunion anymore? Nobody, because there's nothing to catch up about. You've been following everybody
Makes sense.
their entire life.
Right.
And yeah, so it's crazy. It's just, yeah, this feeling of, yeah, being accountable to everybody all the time.
Well, let's talk about the ultimate vulnerability, being alone on the stage with your guitar, opening up the show.
Yeah.
You know, please don't take this as an insult, because
don't.
it's certainly not. But they didn't buy the ticket to go see you.
No, that's, I'm fully aware of that sometimes. I will say though, I think, you know, I mean, if we're just talking about in general, absolutely. And, you know, was fully prepared if I walked out on these shows and, you know, I've definitely played rooms before where nobody listened to me.
Mhm.
And, you know, there's a gig at the Fillmore in San Francisco. They'll hire people to play in the poster room upstairs. Have you been there?
No, not to the poster room.
It's just upstairs in the Fillmore, and you can play there. They book acts in there, and I played a lot of gigs there where literally no one is listening to you except for maybe one or two people. You know, you see them connecting, but there's plenty of gigs I played where people talk over my entire set, and I think that's just part of, you know, what you sign up for as a performer. You realize, yeah, these people aren't here to see me.
Right, you
So
just got to
I
give
can't
it to them,
complain.
though. Now
And
is
it's also
your
not
chance.
their job. You know, I'm up here working right now. You know,
Right.
if I can't win them over, I can't blame them. I can only blame myself. You know, that
But
means
it's
I
your
have to be
chance
more
to
interested.
get them.
Right, exactly.
Now, before shows, are you walking the floor? Are you hanging out backstage? What are you doing? Kind of in the minutes prior to
Mhm.
you know your 5-minute call.
Yeah, for these shows, you know, Matt's doing these sort of meet and greets
Mhm.
before the shows where he's meeting. It's usually, I don't know if it's like quite 100 people. It might be, but he'll do these sorts of hour-long meet and greets, and that's when I'll generally show up to the venue and start setting up like with the merch guy. and then I'll sound check before they open the doors. And then usually for that first, it's usually doors are an hour before my set. For that first half hour, I'll just be at the merch table, and so many people come up and they'll be buying Matt's merch, and they'll sort of look at what I have, and
Kind
they'll
of look
not
at you at the
realize that
corner of your eye, like, are you a roadie?
yeah, well, they have no clue that
Right.
I'm the opening act, unless some people have looked into it, because on some of them my name's on the ticket or it's on the marquee or whatever. So some people have looked into it and they recognize me, but for the most part, people come up and they don't realize they're looking at my stuff and they'll be, oh, I want to get this shirt, and I'll be like, I'm happy to sell this to you, but I want you to know that this is the opener's merchandise. And they're like, oh, okay, never mind, and then sort of back off. And then as soon as I hit the stage, like I can some of them come up to me afterwards and like, oh my god, I had no idea that like you were the opener. I was like,
Right.
I know. Well, how could you know? But literally, usually about half hour before my set, then I'll go backstage.
Okay.
Matt's usually on the bus, so I usually have the dressing room to myself, and so I'll be back there just sort of chilling, and I'll pick up my guitar about 10, 15 minutes, play through a couple songs, and then at least for these shows, nobody comes and gets me. It's just I take the stage right at 8 o'clock. I just walk out, and
How long are your sets?
25 minutes.
Okay.
So I play 6 songs. My songs
That's
are pretty
great.
short. So. And for me, I mean, it's really flattering when people say like, "Oh, I wish you played longer," and which is great. I hope to, when I come back to town, I hope they come see me where I can play longer. But for me, it's the perfect length to come, give them your 6 best, and just get off the stage.
Right.
Because it's true, they didn't come to see you, and if they want more, perfect. Then I've sort of done my job.
Now, is Matt Nathanson playing solo acoustic as well?
He's playing with his guitar player named Aaron Tapp.
Okay.
So he has another band member on stage, and they're playing pretty long sets. I mean, about an hour and 45 minutes each night, I think. And
That's definitely money's worth.
but he's also, Matt's not just a great songwriter and great, performer for music. He's also just incredibly entertaining as a person. I mean, the show is really half music, half him just being funny. And I genuinely believe he could have been a stand-up comic if he didn't do music. And when you're in the room, you can really tell. And it's something I'm really jealous. It's something I want for myself, which is the people don't just love Matt's music; they love him, and they support him. And so, even though some people might shy away from kind of like an acoustic show, like maybe they just want the full band production, I mean, people really come out to see him and to reconnect with him. And I think he's done a good job of, whether it's the meet and greets, other shows I've gone to before he was doing these sort of little meet and greets. Like I think the last time I saw him was at Great American Music Hall. He was doing an acoustic show, and he just hung out till everybody who wanted to see him said hello. And that gets a little unmanageable, so I think they sort of pared it down for this one.
Sure.
But he's just a great entertainer, great all around dude. So
All right. Well, let's get back into you. The Heir apparent here in Los Angeles, California, front of house. We're going to talk a little bit later about tour buses.
okay,
I have my thoughts. I know you have yours after
Sure.
being on this tour. I do want to know if there has been any motion sickness. And we'll talk about what you do after your set as well. But I want to
Okay.
hear a song.
okay.
Let's hear another song. The Heir apparent is our guest. You are listening to Front of House live at the North Hollywood Hideout.
Well, I'm gonna do this one. This is actually a cover song. And actually, this song, the last time I was on the Front of House podcast, I was coming from Central California. I played a Bob Dylan tribute show in Santa Barbara. I had gone up on stage to sing Mr. Tambourine Man. I had driven from the Bay Area halfway down, had locked my keys in the car at a rest stop, made it just in time to play this one song. All I had to do was play one song. And after the first verse, I forgot the lyrics completely. I completely spaced the lyrics. And this poor guy in the front row had to keep feeding me the lyrics. And it was just, in your dreams, just like, oh, this is the worst show I could ever imagine.
That's one of the worst nightmares an artist can ever have.
It wasn't that bad though. I mean, it
Okay.
was. I mean, it was awful, but it didn't feel as bad. It just was what it
Good.
was, and I survived. But I think that night I was driving to a motel in the middle of nowhere, and I think we had confirmed. You're like, hey, let's do the podcast tomorrow, and I was like, okay. So I turned my car around, and I remember I showed up, and I told you that story on the podcast, and so I played this song, Mr. Tambourine Man, and I don't think I touched it for a year after that, but I think that performance made it stick with me, and I play it every night now on the tour. So maybe I'll play that for you now.
Please.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine tambourine man, play a song for me. I'm not sleepy, and there is no place I'm going to. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning, I'll come following you. Though I know that evening's empire has returned into sand, has vanished from my hand, left me blindly to stand, but still not sleeping. My weariness amazes me, I'm branded on my feet. I have no one to meet, and the ancient empty streets too dead for dreaming. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. I'm not sleepy, and there is no place I'm going to. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning, I'll come following you. Take me on a trip upon your magic swirling ship. My senses have been stripped, my hands can't feel to grip, my toes too numb to step, waiting only for my boot heels to be wandering. I'm ready to go anywhere, I'm ready for to fade into my own parade. Cast your dancing spell my way, I promise to go under it. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. I'm not sleepy, and there is no place I'm going to. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning, I'll come following you. Take me disappearing through the smoke rings of my mind, down the foggy ruins of time, fly past the frozen leaves and the haunted frightened trees, out to the windy beach, far from the twisted reach of crazy sorrow. Yes, to dance beneath the diamond sky, with one hand waving free, silhouetted by the sea, circled by the circus sands, with all memory and fate driven deep beneath the waves. Let me forget about today until tomorrow. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. I'm not sleepy, and there is no place I can go to. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning, I'll come following you.
It's M, the heir apparent, and we are Front of House Live. I'm on C- number 3. How are you doing? Are you enjoying this? You know, it's funny, M, the heir apparent, when his name was Kyle M. Tarizzi, hit me up to be a guest on Front of House a few years back. And this Mr. Tambourine Man song that he just played, as he said, he messed it up at a show. And I told him when we did that episode of Front of House, I told him, well, you have to redeem yourself. You have to redeem yourself right now. You have to play it. And he did, and he nailed it, and it was awesome. So overcome your fears, friends and neighbors. This is Front of House Live. This season on Front of House, we got some great artists. Next week, we welcome Ted Russell Camp, the guy who is Shooter Jennings' bass player, Shooter's Waylon's kid, but also, and even more bigger and more importantly, is right now, currently in this entire summer, he's one of the greatest bass players in the world's bass player. Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses. Ted Russell Camp is on him. We will talk about that tour next week on Front of House. Zach Selwyn will be our guest in a few weeks. We got Adrian Brannon, a voice that didn't make any chairs turn around on the TV show The Voice, but she made all of us turn around here in the North Hollywood Hideout. Bobo Burns is going to join us for a show, and then what I call a coup. What I call a coup. The greatest California country band in the history of California country. IC Hawks in LA. 4-person band. I had to make sure how many fingers I was holding up. 4-person band here in the North Hollywood Hideout for Front of House Live. Again, take a moment, go to wherever you subscribe to podcasts and look for us there at Front of House. You've seen our logo flash around the screen, so you'll see it when you look at podcasts. Oh, that's them. Sign up there. You can also sign up on the Patreon page and, be a part of this for $3 a month, bro. Sis. Come on now. That couch, you could be sitting on. There's the mixer. There's the bar. There's a beer. And there's the brand new driveway that I had poured, which is why the dogs aren't in here. Anyway, there you go. Let's get back to that static shot. And I'm glad you're here. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Tell a friend. We're going to be doing this every 2 weeks because what we're doing is we release a front of house episode split into 2 parts. After part 2 is released, on Monday, we will air the entire video episode of Front of House right here at Front of House Live. Thanks for being here. If you have any suggestions, comments, whatever, we'll take them. We'd love to hear them. We're going to get back to the Heir Apparent. I just want to remind you again that his website, this is mxoxo.com. This is mxoxo.com. He releases all of his new music there. Thanks to Sue and Josh. Thanks to you. Let's get back to the show. The Heir Apparent is Front of House. And the Heir Apparent is our guest, Front of House. It's almost as if that song was written for you to perform right here.
Thank you.
It works perfectly for you. I'm glad you've busted that out and continue to play it.
Yeah, it's it was really that playing it for you last time that sort of cemented that for me, and it took me a while to come back to it.
It got shamed into the
set
list.
Yeah, well, I think you had said you got to redeem yourself. Let's do it, and I said okay, and I think it's strange. I had prepared it, and even the part where I sort of make it my own there in the center. But I think playing it on your podcast was the first time I said, oh, you know what, that kind of works for me, and so I think maybe about a year ago or so I was thinking. It was actually kind of funny. I read this article. This sort of clickbaity thing, it was geared at songwriters, and it was like 10 reasons why your singer-songwriter show is boring. And I was like, oh, well, I got to click on this. Right. And one of them was, you're not playing enough covers. And as someone who, I've had a lot of success online doing cover songs on Spotify and stuff, but who was really eager to focus on my original music, I thought, that the reasoning made sense, which is, in a situation like where you're opening for someone like Matt Nathanson, nobody knows your music.
Right.
A well-done cover, if you do it well, is a good way to connect with people. And actually, if you make it your own, too, it's a good way to show them your own spin on something familiar.
Exactly. And, I think we may have discussed this the last time you were on the show.
Possibly, yeah. And I think that's exactly what it is for me now, and I really own it. And as much as I'd love to say that what really sticks in people's mind is, my perfect rendition of my own masterwork song that I'm presenting to them. I think what really sort of sometimes gets a bigger reaction than anything and really sort of stops the room is when I play Mr. Tambourine Man.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Thanks for setting that ball in motion.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Let's see. So we've gone through the pre-show rituals. What's the first thing you do after you leave the stage to glorious applause. I'm sure there's a few bows, maybe a couple screens for an encore, but you're a respectful artist. You don't take
Right.
Matt
I
Nathan's
don't go over
time.
my allotted time.
Right.
I leave them wanting more, and
So
and let Matt take the
uproarious
stage.
aplomb
Right.
from
Right.
the
Roses
from the
being
paid
cast
audience.
at me, and
Right. Panties
sometimes
on the stage.
yeah, sometimes
Uh-huh.
ladies' underwear and men. What I immediately do is run my main guitar off, and then I run back on stage and grab my tuning pedal and my cables and my backup guitar, and then I'll usually run to the dressing room and drop everything off and sprint as fast as I can over to the merch table.
Right.
Because I tell everyone, I say, I'm gonna be at that merch table in 5 minutes. Come say hello. You don't have to buy anything to say hello. And but that's really one of the chances that people have to not only meet me but also for me to sell merch. And so that 30 minutes or so between my set and Matt's is me hopefully meeting a lot of people and selling them CDs and getting them to sign up for the mailing list and shaking hands and taking photos of people. And
See,
then yeah.
That's the big thing for especially unknown artists is don't go hide away in your dressing room. You
Dude, I
need to
totally
be
agree.
amongst the people.
I really feel that way. I mean, I have a friend named Pat Hull who I mean he's when you do something creative, everyone's nice and you make a lot of friends. And I think a lot of people are surprised. You're always told everyone's gets cutthroat, and that's not really my experience. I find people are genuinely great, and everyone's trying to make it, and to the extent that they're able to and willing to support each other. But there's only a few people who you really feel like creatively like endeared to, and you really feel like that person is not only. I feel like we're like kindred creative spirits. Like it hurts. They're so good, and one of them is this guy Pat Hull, Pathull. And actually, it was three of us played this. I had the show in Mountain View, California, at Red Rock Coffee in Mountain View, and so
That's
I would
where
go.
Shoreline Amphitheater is.
Yeah, same town. Yeah, same town. It's on Castro Street.
That's the smaller stage.
Yes, Red Rock Coffee, not Red Rock, Morrison, Colorado. But I would take songwriters down there, and one time I took Pat and I took our other buddy Kevin, who performs as field medic. He's doing phenomenal as well. People should check him out. But we were having this talk, which is they noticed because I would, as soon as I would just stand by the door as people were leaving and say goodbye to everybody, and they both noted like, oh, you're really good at like meeting people. For me, it's like the most important aspect, But I had a talk with my buddy Pat, who said like for him, it's enough just to sort of show up and present the gift. He's very he's like a sage when it comes to things, and what he gets out, he's in it for very different reasons, And part of me wanting to do that is, I have sort of a business mind about it too, and so I sort of see the practical benefit of meeting people, but also it's the only thing that feels real to me. Like the performances are fun, it's great, but it's so small. It's such a small window of time. And when I look back, even on this tour, but every show I've ever played, it's not the time on stage that really sticks with me. It's the moment afterward where I meet someone, or it's, a lot of people say nice things, but you do get people who really reach out to you and want to connect and let you know that for whatever reason, whatever you're making is like speaking to them.
Well, it's certainly one of the building blocks you need to be a career musician is to be out there meeting people. But you bring up an interesting point. Your friend Pat Hull is not into it for the meeting of people, whatever. He has his own reasons for being into it. What are your reasons? What's your driving reason for playing music, for being there up on stage, for continuing to write? Why do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think it's probably something that's in common with a lot of people, and I don't think it's good or bad. I just think it is the case. I think on some level, most creative people who stick with it as long as I have, who it's not just a hobby, but like who really pursue it, I think there's sometimes, a void, for lack of a better word, and I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but I think people who are driven to perform and create and be observed and sort of celebrated to the extent, not always consciously, but I think like people like myself and all my peers who don't stop. I've known a lot of people who do this and have all stopped. I think for a lot of us who keep going, it's because this is sort of what we need, whether it was how we were raised or what we didn't get or what we got too much of or whatever it was. We have this need to sort of like we only feel alive when we're being sort of celebrated in a way or when we're entertaining people.
So it's nourishment.
Yeah, it's sort of psycho-spiritual nourishment. There's this thing that whatever that hole needs to be filled with. Some people it's drugs, some people it's sex, some people it's food. I think for people like myself, it's sort of we want to create. I think it has to do with especially if you're an artist, you like in some ways you feel like you're expressing your truest parts of yourself through your music. And so
Sure.
there's a part where you feel like nothing else can make me feel fully seen unless my creative work is being celebrated, because that's who I feel like I really am. Like people can be nice to me in my personal life, but they don't see like the real me. And if people like celebrated my creative work, then I would feel whole. And I'm not saying it ever works out that way in actual practice, but I think that's like the driving mechanism on some level is to fill a void of something.
It's a solid answer. What would you do if you weren't playing music or any art, doing any art at all?
Do you mean like practically, or
What
if I
would
had
you
my
do
choice?
practically for take art and music completely out of the picture? And you have to have some kind of trade. You have to make a living somehow. But you can choose.
Yeah.
You can say I would be a doctor, and I'd say great, that'd be a fine answer. But what would you do if music and art could not be a part of it?
It's so hard. I mean, just as my life is now, like not married, not having kids, I mean, I'm not saying I'd be happy, but I'd probably still be working in restaurants. I mean, I did that for a decade. And even though it really was challenging in a lot of ways, it also gave me a lot of time to make my creative work. So idealistically, I mean, I would have a job that just sort of paid the bills and would give me the space and time to just, still do what I feel like is my life's work. That's an entirely different question. I mean, like I said, I have a girlfriend now, and who knows what the future holds. But, as I get older, I'm, turning 34 soon, marriage.
Old man, dude. Look
Well,
at
it's funny. I mean, I think you're a little bit older than I am, but I feel like it's
Decade.
crazy when you turn into that age where you start calling everyone, "Oh, he's a good kid," and he's like 20 in his early 20s.
Right.
It just starts happening because that's how you literally see people.
Right.
And I do have a job. I don't mean to be secretive about it. I probably shouldn't talk about it, but I do. I'll just say I do some crisis line counseling, but I work with a lot of like younger people who are going to school for like mental health, and they want to be therapists or psychologists. And it's like I'm working with a lot of like 19-year-olds, and like they don't even know a pre 9/11 world. It's like I'm finally dealing with kids who have no idea what I'm talking about, and I'm an old man to them. And I think the only thing I mean by all of this is, when you're younger, you think people stop doing this because they give up. But the truth is, life is long, and you have no idea what you're going to want when you're in your early 30s. And, I'm starting to think about things I never thought I'd ever think about. I'm starting to maybe consider that certain things could make me happy. Like maybe just being married and having kids, like could genuinely like that void that I think creativity is going to fill. I think a lot of people as they get older, they wisen up and they realize, oh yeah, actually that thing is not going to, it's never going to be filled by music, because every win or goal, every box you tick, oh, I want to do that, I want to do that, that's going to make me happy. It never does. Once I get this many likes on my Facebook page, once I get this many streams on Spotify, once I can play that venue or go on tour with that artist, like that's gonna satiate me. It never does. It's like I say, it's sort of like lights in a fog. You can only see 10 feet in front of you, and no matter how far you go, you just see that much further.
Right.
You never arrive. And I think the only thing that's ever, this is where I go back to why it's so important for me to meet people, is because the only thing that has felt real is connecting with people and shaking their hands and that one moment. That's the only thing that feels human, because the performance part is fine, but it's also, there's a weird sort of power thing going on there where I think they're seeing the real me, but that's not the real me. That's not the real me upstage. My name is M the Heir Apparent. Like that's not that's not the real me. The real me is the person between the shows when I'm with my girlfriend in the car, or even before I come to this podcast, playing chess on my iPad, and it's the person who wants to be around for those moments who kind of fills that void that I think a lot of people are trying to fill with celebrity and being celebrated and that sort of stuff.
Well, I'm grateful you have music to fill that void, and I'm very, very grateful that you're playing for us here today. And the Heir Apparent is our guest. Front of House is the podcast. It's in stereo. Crank it up. Let's hear another song.
Okay. So I've been releasing a lot of music online. I have 2 EPs. One came out in 2016. It's called Be Free. Second one came out the next year. It's called Save Yourself. And since then, I've just been releasing a ton of music online. And this year, I'm just going to be releasing a bunch of new original music. And this was the first single of the year. It's called Time of War.
give me one reason to stay here. Why not just say it? I've been thinking no one can save us no more. I think I might even just lay here, hide out and wait for someone braver, 'cause I can't face anymore. Live it up. I wanna make this life worth living, but see the world crumbling down and giving up. 'Cause we are living in a time of war. Someone police, no one's in charge. Our leaders are the criminals at large. We're living in. We're living in. I'm burning out here in this hate. Tired of all this blaming others, certain it's only making me numb. I'm giving too little too late, fighting all the same corruption, certain destruction saving me from. Live it up. Wanna make this life worth living, but see the world crumbling down and giving up. 'Cause we are living in a time of war. Someone police, no one's in charge. Our leaders are the criminals at large. We're living in. We're living in. 'Cause we are living in a time of war. Someone police, no one's in charge. We're angry and we're shaking at the bars. We're living in. We're living in. Can't believe that we thought it would last forever. I can see where we're starting to crack. Hey. We're falling, 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 divided by fear and on the attack. Now more than ever, ever, ever before. We're living in. 'Cause we are living in a time of war. Someone police, no one's in charge. Our leaders are the criminals at large. We're living in. We're living in. 'Cause we are living in a time of war. No one believes a word of ours. We're angry and we're shaking at the bars. We're living in. We're living in. Hey, hey. We're living in.
We are front of house with the Heir apparent. This is Front of House Live. We're back inside the North Hollywood hideout, where we were just a few minutes ago with the Heir apparent. That song called Time of War, and it is available at thisismxoxo.com. Now, this show is fully interactive. We're live. This is happening in real time. This is life. Hope you're living it. Some people are asking questions on our YouTube page. We're going to answer one of those questions right now. Josh, what do we got?
All right, well, Steve-O says, he actually asked something I've always wondered myself. Can I safely rhyme Memphis and fences? Asking for a friend.
Can I safely rhyme Memphis and fences? My first reaction to that is hell yes. My immediate following reaction is no, you can't, because I just wrote a song and I took that rhyme. So please don't, for your friend. All right. It's Front of House Live here in the North Hollywood hideout. More from the Heir apparent. We'll be back with you. You ask a question on the YouTube page. We'll come back and answer it for you. I love you for watching. Back to the show. Here at the North Hollywood hideout. I love your finger picking style, by
Thanks.
the way.
Thank
Let's
you.
talk about the tools of the trade for a minute.
Let's do it.
Introduce me to your guitar.
This is a guitar from a company called The Loar, Loar. And I'm really a fan of small body acoustics, Gibson, sort of LGs. I have like a 60s LGO. But this is sort of a real cheap sort of imitation of sort of the Gibson small body acoustic guitars. and it's real cheap. I found this one on eBay for like $250.
Really?
I normally play. It's called a LO16, which is the earlier version of this model. That actually, I was gonna say Towns Van Sant, but it's he has a similar name. What's his name? Towns Van. I don't know. Anyway, he's a newer songwriter. He's I think he's endorsed by
Justin Towns Earl?
Yes, exactly. Which
Look at
ironically,
that. JTE.
the tour manager for this tour that we're on has managed for him as well.
I love Justin Towns Earl.
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
Okay.
And he plays like and I probably used it on the last podcast we did, but it's this guitar with like a shinier body. And when I started this, that had been my main guitar for, maybe like the last like 8 years or so. But it was sort of beat up. It wasn't holding its tuning very well, so I knew for these shows I had to get a new one. And so I got this newer one. It's not the LO16. I think they call it the LO14. But I got it on eBay for like $250, sent it out, and it works with my whole zeitgeist. I have a black and white theme going. So it's, I'm not really like a gear nerd. I don't know a lot about guitars.
Okay.
A lot of people after shows will talk to me. They're like, "What gauge strings do you have?"
Right,
and I'm
right,
like,
right.
I don't know, and I don't think about it. But
Yeah,
anyway, so
I have my drummer restring my guitar. I don't even know what's on there.
yeah, no.
Yeah.
I mean, I do know what they are, but it's
All right.
I think it's that thing like when you're I think some people get sort of mired in the tools of the trade,
Mhm.
and they're I think when you're like really creating, like that's not really what you're thinking about. I feel like you should sort of look at things like Questlove, the drummer from the Roots, which is like, if that dude sat down in any drum set, he would make it rock.
Absolutely.
It's not about what ply shells he has or what heads he's using or even what stick gauge he has or what cymbals. Like he's just gonna sit down and hear what he's having and he can just conjure something out of it. I feel like that's like the approach you should take. And I don't know why I'm getting all prescriptive, but I feel like anyone who's wondering, like, oh, I gotta wait till I get that guitar before I write that song or record that record. It's like you should work. Like, there's a quote I'm gonna butcher, but I think people can find it based on what I say, which is, start now, use what you have, do what you can, sort of something like that. Which is
That's a bumper sticker right there.
Yeah,
Those are
no,
words to
I'm
live
sure
by.
it is. I'm sure it is. But it's one of those things, which is like
Yeah.
you have everything you need. You don't need to buy that typewriter before you sit down and write that great American novel. Like, the writer David Foster Wallace.
No, not
He
familiar.
wrote Infinite Jest. He's not living anymore, but he hated Q&As because people would ask him questions that he thought he understood like why they were asking, but he thought it was not a meaningful question. He understood their interest, but he wanted them to ask different questions. He felt like people were never asking the right questions. They would say, like, "What's your writing process?" And he's like, he would be, "I could tell you, but it's not going to help you." He was like, "I do 2 drafts by hand, then I type it up, then I revise on that, then I write it again by hand." Or he had this very sort of abstract process that people thought, oh, maybe I have to do it that way. But his whole reasoning was, that's just how I do it. I never thought about it. That's just how I do it. And so what I took out of that is, don't try to aspire to things. Just do more of what you already do. If what you are already doing is sort of writing things by hand, just keep writing by hand. There's probably something about that is integral to like your original voice. So if you have some shitty guitar that your dad gave you that doesn't hold its tuning, but you've been playing on it for 10 years, you should record your record with that.
Right.
Because you're going to sound strange if I give you like a nice Martin Dreadnought guitar. It's just not
Right.
it's not gonna be your voice, And especially now in an era where people can everyone can create and record and make music. Just use what you have. It's one of your only chances of sounding like yourself.
Now, are you writing every day?
No, I used to when I was, first starting out. I mean, I was really sort of, and not that I held to it all the time, but that was sort of the standard that I held myself to. Was if I wasn't writing every day, I couldn't call myself a songwriter. And that was really, I'm really glad that I did that because it sort of taught me discipline. But I'm actually sort of transitioned into a spot now where I sort of go through seasons of writing, and I try to be okay with that. That there's times where I'm sort of soaking things up, and then there's times where like I really have songs to write.
Okay.
And I always, when I do write, when I decide, oh, I'm going to write this song now, then I do it meticulously. Then I'm like, I'm writing every day until that song is finished. And I always have plans. I mean, always have like, I don't ever not really finish things. I sort of finish a song and then I move on. And I always have like a row of songs that I'm planning to get to. Once this is done, I'll get to that. And other things get slotted in. But it's like if I wanted to write every day, I certainly could. I have enough nuggets of songs to do that. But I've actually found over time it actually doesn't do a lot for my songwriting. That doesn't make the songs any better. And it's actually better for me. Like, I sort of look at songs now as like books on my shelf, which is, we all have like 1 or 2 books that we picked up 100 times that we were always intending to read, like The Count of Monte Cristo or something, but we've always gotten like 10 pages into it.
Sure.
But when we finally pick it up and sit down to read it, we go, oh, I'm supposed to be reading it right now.
Right.
Like there's something in it that's super germane to your life at this moment. And I've sort of looked at my songs that way too, which is okay, I have a germ of an idea, but I could hash it out and get the song finished. But I've actually found as often as when I let go, I feel like, oh, I come to the songs at the right time, you know? So that's sort of what I'm experimenting. Maybe I'll look up in 5 years and say, damn, I need to get back to like writing every day. But for right now, I'm trying to be a little more kumbaya about it.
You've just indirectly reminded me that I still have to finish Aldous Huxley's Brave New World.
Oh, okay.
It's still sitting on my bookshelf, and damn it, I got like 70 pages left in it. I've never finished that book. Do you have a book? Is there a book that's on your shelf that you still have?
There certainly have been some. I'm trying to think of any that sort of come to mind. I've been reading a lot of fiction recently. I've been reading a lot of nonfiction, a lot of Chinese philosophy. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's like it's all the classics. I mean, I've always told people if you ever want to buy cheap books, like pristine copies, like of the classics, just go to a used bookstore because they're filled with books that people are always intending to read and never do. They always eventually sell them back.
Smart.
So if you ever want to read the classics, just go to a used bookstore because you'll find unread copies of Charles Dickens and Don Quixote and War and Peace and all those things. So
there's a great used bookstore on the border of North Hollywood and Burbank called the Iliad.
I may have gone there actually. I think I went there when I was in town for the voice audition. I think I had a free day, and I think I may have gone there.
It's an amazing bookstore. Were there like 12 cats in there?
Yeah, and there was there was a bunch of different like pocket rooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I did buy something. Oh, actually, I bought I have a book that I go to all the time. It's called A Source Book in Chinese Philosophy, and it's a phenomenal collection. And I've always known that they've had one called A Source Book in Indian Philosophy. And at our used bookstore in Berkeley, Moe's. Do you know Moe's Books? It's on Telegraph. Oh, it's literally like, to me, it's like the epitome of used bookstores. It's like 4 floors and it's got everything. And they have this Indian Source Book of Indian Philosophy, but it's all marked in. So I would look at it and go, oh, I can't buy it. You know, I want to find one. And literally, I was there and I found like a gently used copy. And so I'm 92% sure I got it at the Iliad.
I was at the Iliad a few months back. My mom was in town and she likes to go see cool places. Mm-hmm. So she said, Michael, let's go check out this bookstore. And we walk in and there are literally hundreds of thousands of books in this book place. And they have their rhyme or reason to where they are scheduled and sorted.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know where anything is.
Right.
The first place I stop, it's like a random, like 12 rows into the store. I walk halfway down and I just look up at the shelf and I see a detective mystery novel by Kinky Friedman, who has become a friend of mine. He was one of the original outlaw country singer-songwriters. And it was just the weirdest thing. Like, this is serendipitous.
Yeah.
I looked up. The only book I laid eyes on was written by a friend of mine at a bookstore. There's 100,000 books. Why did I stop here? Why did I look here?
Dude, yeah, you're speaking my language right now.
There's magic in it.
That's I mean, that's my that's even when I say like I'm trying to give up to this idea of just sort of writing when the songs come to me is, you know, I've been a adamant sort of skeptic and atheist my whole life, but I've just, especially in my adult life, I've just had experiences that I'm not making any sort of metaphysical claim about them. I'm not saying that, you know, I just don't have no other word for them than they're sort of spiritual, or numinous is a word I like to use a lot. Just I'm sort of inviting the numinous into my life a little bit more. And part of it is I had a similar experience. I mean, I was mentioning Chinese philosophy, and honestly, the name Heir Apparent sort of came to me at this time where I was sort of having these sort of spiritual, for lack of a better word, I really don't like that word, but I just don't have another one for it, insights. And I really got into Chinese philosophy after stumbling on the I Ching at a bookstore. I remember just walking into a used bookstore and feeling called to be there. For some reason, I saw this copy of the Odyssey, even though your bookstore is called the Iliad, but I saw a copy of the Odyssey in the window, and it was just winking at me. And I go in and I grab it, and I'm looking around, I'm looking at the fiction. I've never been in this bookstore before. And I grab a couple other things. I think one of them was like Double Earners by Joyce. And then I just had this moment where I was like, this is not what I'm here for. And I put everything back, and I've never done this before. But I literally just sort of stood there with my eyes closed and just sort of thought, I just spoke to inside myself, to the cosmos, whatever. I just said, as earnestly as I possibly could, I just said, whatever I'm here for, whatever I'm here to see, show it to me. And I just started walking through the bookstore, and I end up like as I'm walking, I'm seeing all these books just sort of wink at me from like my past. Like I was really into Shakespeare. I walked by the whole Shakespeare section, and I
Uh-huh.
see this big tome about Macbeth, which is like my favorite play, like winking at me. And I pass through the drama section, and I see all these books, and I just turn this corner past like these French books. There's no reason to go up there, and I get to the top of the staircase, and I just see this yellow spine. It's the first thing I lay my eyes on, and it's just I knew the minute I looked at it. I didn't even know what it was. I said, "That's what I'm here for." And I go and I pick it and I see it's the I Ching, which I knew what it was. It's an ancient book of Chinese philosophy and divination or whatever. I didn't really know what it was, but I had heard of it. But I pull it out and I just open up to the first hexagram and I read. And it was like fireworks going off in my brain. It was the spookiest thing that's ever happened to me because it's all metaphor and it's like tarot. It's this sort of spiritual or allegory for like, the spiritual journey or whatever it is. But as someone who spent a lot of time just sort of academically studying religions or thinking about religion, it's never touched me. It's never moved me. But I remember reading this and I felt like it was like finding myself. I was like, whatever this allegory, this story is like dynamically like lightning bolts in my brain, like speaking to me. And it's like finding that book. I knew that like I was like, this is what I'm here for. And I remember like taking it home, like my life was like the never ending story. Like, when Bastian like steals the book from the bookstore and runs home and starts his adventure. It was like that. I knew I was entering like a different chapter in my life. And when I talk about it, I feel like a total madman. But if I'm just being like as empirically honest about what I experienced and the influence it's had on my life, I mean, that's what it is. And I don't know if that's spiritual. I'm not saying there's a higher power that condones it. I just think it's just information like anything else. And I'm trying to like incorporate it into my life as sort of honestly as I can.
All right, well, let's embrace this moment of Zen with another song. M, the heir apparent, is our guest. You are front of house.
Cutting off, blacking out. Gotta face my fears alone here. Gotta break these bonds and leave them for a while. I'm smoking up, passing out. Fight away my feelings for me. Gotta be this kind of creature for a while. So long. Tell me if there's something to know, because I can't hold on to nothing, to nothing. Tell her I'm sorry I left when I did, but I felt the earth crumbling as she started to slip. I knew I would leave her. Tell her I'm sorry I left when I did, but I felt the earth crumbling as she started to slip, and knew that. So long, so long, so long. I wanna race out in the morning. I wanna see my future form. I wanna see you at a distance from the top.
That's straddling the line, walking the tightrope between a love song and a breakup song.
It's exactly that. It's a goodbye song. I think it's, and I played it just now. I mean, it's, it's, I talk about this whole something on the I Ching. It came right at the end of a relationship, and it was somebody that I was really connected with, and somebody I really liked. But I could just tell that they were in one part of their life, and I needed to be in another, and it wasn't like there was anything going wrong. I just knew that I needed to be somewhere else and it wasn't going to happen. And I needed to, I just talked about it, like I needed to make room in my life for the next best thing. And I knew it's just not going to come if I have this person in my life. And I didn't know what I had to do. I didn't know what growing I had to do, but I've just always felt the need to grow and the need to sort of like advance, and that life was like a journey inward, and I had to sort of mine deeper into myself. And sometimes you're with people who are just sort of fine with you being where you're at because it kind of makes them more comfortable with they're at. But it's kind of like running a race, where you're like, I got more miles than me. Is someone saying, let's stop here, and you say, I got to see what I'm made of. I
Right,
want to keep
right.
running. And so a
I
lot of
like
those,
that analogy.
yeah. Well, I mean that song literally comes out of, and I talk about the I Ching and I talk about the never-ending story because, I think these children's stories are really,
Betrayal.
dude. These are like deep, and even children's stories, folk tales. These are deep allegories for deep parts of our psyche. And that when we read them as adults, we're like, oh, this is really profound. And that song literally comes from like the beginning of the hero's journey. Like, um, Atreyu is in the swamps of sadness with this horse Artek, and his horse starts to sink, and he's like, "Why are you stopping? We need to keep going." And the horse is just sinking, and he's lost his friend, he's lost his companion, but he doesn't see it yet, but he has a whole journey ahead of him. And so that song for me, and the video that I made for it, is sort of a whole tribute to the never-ending story, and that scene in particular, which is sometimes you're looking at someone who's content to be where they're at, and it's not a judgment, but you just know that you have further to go. And that whole song is, I'm cutting off, I'm setting out, I gotta, face my fears alone. He can't have his friend with him for the thing. Like, I don't know what's out there, but there's something I have to face, and I'm sorry to say goodbye, but I have to. And that lyric where it says, tell her I'm sorry I left when I did, but I felt the earth crumbling and she started to slip. And then I knew I would leave her. That sadness of, I see you slipping, but I know I'm gonna let go, but I need to do it for myself. That's sort of where that song came from for me.
That gives me chills, man. Our guest is M. the Heir Apparent. You can find him across social media. Remember that Heir is spelled H-E-I-R. And he is our guest today, front of house in the North Hollywood hideout in Los Angeles, California. We got time for one more song, my brother. Bring us home.
All right, there's a song called "The Fall of Rome."
Smoke it if you got some, get him while the getting is good. Show your claws, you need them cause you feel misunderstood. So your heart is beating, it's bleeding, that's good. No one cares, why would they? Don't for theirs. Upset with the outcome, nothing works whatever you give. Show them all, keep holding on and screaming to the wind. It's only a defeat that you meet in the end. No one cares, no one cares. Every song I've learned to sing's already old. Time turned out the reasons into dust. What's forever in the morning is not together in the gloam. Tell me I'm not living in the fall of Rome. Shake it where you got one, use it cause you're losing it fast. On and on it's going, gone, it fades into the past. No one knows your history, your meaning is lost. No one cares, no one cares. Every song I've learned to sing's already old. Time turned all the reasons into dust. What's forever in the morning is not together in the gloam. Tell me I'm not living in the fall of Rome. Did I fall Tell me I'm not living it. Tell me I'm not living it. What's forever in the morning is not together when you're one. Tell me I'm not living in the what? Tell me I'm not living in the fall of Rome.
Yeah, party people. What do you think of that? The Heir Apparent, front of house, live at the North Hollywood Hideout in Los Angeles, California. Great performance, my man. Thank you. Again, go to thisismxoxo.com and make sure that you pick up every single one of the Heir Apparent's new releases. He's tracking a new song and releasing it mastered, fully produced, and it's great production, man. I've heard quite a few of them, and I'm really impressed with the music he's put out. This is mxoxo.com for the Heir Apparent. Make sure you subscribe to the Front of House podcast, because this show that you've seen tonight is only a piece of the podcast. It's only the live performance. When we do the actual podcast, which is a stereo music podcast, we make sure that there's about 10 minutes and a great song at the top and about 10 minutes and a great song at the bottom of every episode in stereo for you. So make sure when you're driving in your car or doing whatever, plug your phone in to your car, listen to our podcast, and then crank that mother up. You know, it's amazing, the stereo systems in cars these days, and amazing that you can just take this thing and plug it into your car. The other thing is smart TVs. Now, we've been following this broadcast on my Samsung TV, and I just went to the YouTube app. I went to youtube.com/FOH_POD, and we've been watching this. The reason why the picture-in-picture was a little weird, there was a point at the picture-in-picture where I was fully intent, because I'm watching it on the screen, and we're watching the feed of playing, okay? When it played back in the real time, because we were watching it on delay, I was totally into an interview and not paying attention to any of the songs. That's not the way it happened, which brings me to my next subject. We need about $30 in gear. So I need 10 of you to go to patreon.com/front of house and just become a fan of Front of House. Lowest volume subscription is $3 a month. For $3 a month, you're getting at least 4 mastered MP3s and a whole bunch of other perks. Just go to patreon.com/front of house and sign up there. We need 10 of you guys because we need $30 in gear. And it's gonna make the show, it's gonna make the experience, it's gonna make everything a lot better than you. We will be adding cameras to the room. We will be giving you a full flow of what you're seeing going on. And we also decided during this was kind of a test run, we've also decided that we are going to keep that upper third of what's happening on Front of House Live in the video presentation the entire time until the artist starts playing a song. When we're out, we're going to listen to the song. So again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of this. We all think this went pretty well. Technology is your friend. Embrace it. Especially you music podcast hosts who are still releasing your shit in 64-bit mono. Don't do that. Don't do that. Follow us on Twitter at FOHPod. What else do I need to say? Is there something I'm missing? Have we touched some things?
I think we're good.
Okay. Thank you guys for watching this. I really hope you had as good a time as we did. This show will be available on YouTube at this page. So it'll go up and you'll be able to watch it at your convenience. But if you are at least a groupie or a producer of Front of House, you're not only going to get access to these Front of House lives, you're also going to be able to actually peer into it when we're recording it live. That's coming up. So jump on board, be a part of it. This train's a rolling. You better get on. We're going to close tonight with another reading from the Big Book of Rock. Bonnie Raitt is not only blessed with an exceptionally powerful and emotive voice, but is just about the only woman in mainstream rock to be recognized as a guitar virtuoso. But for all her talent for blues interpretations and her songwriting skills, international success was a long time coming. A reading from the Big Book of Rock.
Hail, hail, rock and roll.
Want you to join us in 2 weeks for another edition of Front of House Live. I'm Mike Dawson. Thanks to Sue Merlino for producing this. We'll be back next week. Until next time, be good to yourself. Hi, I'm Mike Dawson. I want to invite you to be a part of the stereo music podcast experience, Front of House. What's Front of House? Well, I just told you. It's a stereo music podcast experience. We have 2 ears. When we listen to music, the sound vibrations hit our ears at separate times. Therefore, stereo. So when you're listening to music, it's best to pump it in stereo. So what makes Front of House the best music podcast? Well, it's the artists, it's the interviews, and it's you. Because you now have a chance to be a part of the great stereo music experiment we call Front of House. You want to be in the audience? You want to be at our live streams on Tuesday night? Do you want high-definition MP3s fully mastered of the artists playing? Do you want exclusive access to videos? Do you want to come to a big Front of House concert? You can. All you gotta do is sign up as a Patreon supporter of Front of House. There's a link right here. Just go to it and sign up. There are a few different levels with a few different perks, but I promise you, every single one's gonna be worth it. Coming this summer and not going away. Front of House, the greatest stereo music podcast ever produced, live from the North Hollywood hideout in Los Angeles, California. This is Front of House.